It could have carboned up valves or injectors because we've swapped the coils and it's still the misfire on the same cylinder. Before we take it on a road test, we can see the long-term fuel trim for bank 1 subtracting 8.6, so it's running red.
Think your engine misfire needs a costly overhaul? You're not alone, and I thought the same. But while troubleshooting, I found something that mechanics rarely admit. A single overlooked sensor was the real culprit. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to do to fix it and avoid repairs that drain your wallet. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. What if that annoying engine misfire that's been driving you crazy isn't a sign of catastrophic engine failure at all? Imagine finding out the repair you've been quoted thousands of dollars for could be solved with a simple $50 fix. It sounds wild, right? But this happens more often than you'd think, and a case involving a 6.0-liter engine proves just how easy it is to jump to the wrong conclusion.
Got a vehicle that runs perfectly fine at speeds, anything over 20 miles an hour, but it kind of bogs down and misfires in a couple cylinders. While fuel injectors still have the same misfires on the same cylinder. Number 6 is the one that acts up the most. It could have carboned up valves or injectors because we've swapped the coils and it's still the misfire on the same cylinder.
Here's the common misconception mechanics often capitalize on. When your engine misfires persistently, you're told something drastic like, it's the cylinder heads. Maybe it's called a compression problem or even the beginning of total engine failure. And before you know it, you're staring at an estimate for thousands of dollars in repairs or even a complete engine overhaul. The reality? Mechanics often avoid mentioning simpler, cost-effective fixes like a faulty sensor because the alternative brings in much higher revenue. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's more to this story than meets the eye. Take the 6.0-liter engine example. At first glance, it looked like a nightmare scenario. The engine was misfiring on cylinder 6, and the diagnostic data was all over the place. For starters, the mass airflow sensor readings were wildly erratic, fluctuating even when the vehicle was just sitting idle. The fuel trim values, a key data point that helps mechanics say how the engine is adjusting fuel delivery, weren't normal either. Short-term and long-term fuel trims both painted the picture of a system struggling to maintain proper air-to-fuel ratios.
Before we take it on a road test, we can see the long-term fuel trim for bank 1 subtracting 8.6, so it's running red. Term fuel trim for bank 2, it's subtracting 5.5. So it's running a little bit on the rich side. Is 8.3, 8.5, 8.6 grams per second, which is a little high.
At this point, you'd think it's something deep in the engine, but that wasn't the case. The mechanic tackling the issue started by isolating the problem through live data analysis tools. With the scan tool connected, they focused on the misfire counts, which clearly pinpointed cylinder 6 as the troublemaker. At this stage, most shops might immediately suggest cylinder work, reasoning that something mechanical, like a burnt valve or bad compression, must be the cause. But instead of leaping to conclusions, this mechanic chose a methodical approach, relying on data rather than assumptions. To understand why that was so important, let's get into what the fuel trim values revealed. Short-term fuel trim, or STFT, shows how the engine is instantly reacting to changes in conditions, while long-term fuel trim, or LTFT, reflects the broader adjustments the engine makes over time. Subtracting fuel trim values, as seen in this case, revealed a rich condition, meaning the engine was receiving too much fuel. A rich condition can easily mimic the effects of deeper engine problems, like unstable idling and misfires, and it's one of the reasons misdiagnosis happens so frequently. But the mechanic took these clues and dug deeper. By unplugging the mass airflow MAF sensor, a seemingly unconventional step, you can quickly determine whether it's playing a role in the misfire. That's because without the MAF sensor sending airflow data to the engine's computer, the computer shifts to using default settings, completely bypassing the sensor.
Here's the data. The short term is 0, 0. It's cleared that up quite well. The long term, it's still showing it's running red. These 4, and we'll watch it. Now there's hardly any misfires, except on cylinder number 6, it's picking up some. Except for 6. 6 keeps going. 2's misfiring a little, but 6 misfires.
In in this 6.0-liter engine case, the second the mechanic unplugged the MAF sensor, the misfire stopped. Just like that, the real culprit surfaced. It wasn't a bad cylinder or a broken valve. It was an inexpensive failing sensor feeding incorrect data to the engine. Replacing the MAF sensor didn't just fix the misfire. Once installed, the live data showed normal airflow readings, and the fuel trim values evened out within seconds. No more rich condition, no more misfires, and no more stress. Here's the kicker: that small overlooked component cost less than $50 to replace. Almost laughable compared to the financial hit from unnecessary cylinder head repairs. But why aren't more mechanics talking about fixes like these? Some might simply misdiagnose the problem, jumping to catastrophic conclusions because it's easier than diving into live data analysis. Others, however, might be inclined to propose larger repairs due to the profit margins involved. Either way, it leaves you, the engine owner, footing a much bigger bill than necessary. And if you're not familiar with your car's diagnostics, it's easy to say yes to repairs that sound incredibly urgent and complicated. What this story really shows is how the simplest answer is often the correct one, even when it comes to something as intimidating as engine trouble. Misfires aren't always the engine's way of saying it needs a full teardown. Sometimes all it takes is a little patience, a willingness to explore the data carefully, and yes, a sensor swap to bring your engine back to life. Speaking of that sensor though, have you ever wondered why it's rarely a first suspect? That's what we're getting into next. Could a small, unassuming sensor hold the secret to making your engine run better and longer than you ever thought possible? For many drivers, the mass airflow sensor, or MAF sensor, doesn't even come up during conversations about maintenance, but that little component plays a critical role in keeping your engine running smoothly. It measures the air entering your engine and sends that data to the ECU, or engine control unit, which then adjusts the amount of fuel delivered for optimal combustion. Get it right, and the engine hums along efficiently. But when the MAF sensor fails, things go downhill fast.
The mass airflow sensor data is all over the place. It's idling, but it's up, it's down, 7, 4. I mean, it's all over the place. Oh, now we've unplugged it, and we'll escape this data. We'll go back to misfire data. Check it out, it's not misfiring anymore. It's only -5 and -4. It's starting to get better. It might take a time to equilibrate itself. You want to get out and drive it so it sets itself all back.
What makes this sensor's failure so problematic is how easily it can trick both the ECU and the mechanic. When the sensor starts providing inaccurate readings, the ECU miscalculates the air-fuel mixture, potentially causing the engine to run either too rich with too much fuel or too lean with too little. Either scenario can lead to symptoms that mimic far more severe problems. Think consistent misfires, a rough idle, sluggish acceleration, or even stalling. These are the kind of issues that can make you believe something deep inside the engine is failing, when in reality, it's often just this one sensor sending bad data. Let's go back to the 6.0-liter engine case, where all of these symptoms were at play. The engine was misfiring, running rich, and showing poor performance across the board. At first look, it seemed like a major mechanical fault. However, the mechanic decided to start with live data analysis, focusing on the MAF sensor's performance. Instead of consistent, stable airflow readings, the sensor data was fluctuating wildly, even when the engine was idle. This erratic behavior raised a red flag. To confirm their suspicion, the mechanic performed one of the simplest diagnostic tests, disconnecting the MAF sensor entirely. Here's why this step is so effective. When you unplug the MAF sensor, the ECU stops relying on its faulty readings and switches to default airflow calculations. These presets are less precise, but functional enough to keep the car running. The moment the mechanic disconnected the sensor in this case, the engine smoothed out, the misfire stopped, and it was clear that the MAF sensor was the root of the problem. A quick replacement brought everything back to normal. No more misfires, no more erratic fuel trims, and no overpriced engine teardown needed. That leads us to an important question. Why do so many mechanics fail to catch this? Part of the issue boils down to the symptoms themselves. A rich fuel condition, triggered by incorrect airflow data, can show up as poor fuel economy, hesitation during acceleration, or even catalytic converter damage over time. These are big-ticket problems that mechanics often associate with issues like bad injectors, failing valves, or compression problems. If they don't dive into the live data, they might never consider the MAF sensor as the likely culprit. And then there's the other factor. Some repair shops find it more profitable to recommend bigger, more expensive fixes instead of exploring smaller, less lucrative repairs. Even the scariest warning signs from your engine might have surprisingly simple fixes hiding behind them. A failing MAF sensor, often overlooked, can mimic catastrophic issues, leading to costly and unnecessary repairs. Understanding your car's diagnostics is key. Familiarizing yourself with tools like live data analysis and questioning expensive quotes can save you thousands. As Consumer Reports emphasizes, maintaining a reliable vehicle is a smart financial move in today's market, where new car prices average over $46,000. With regular care and attention to small problems, you'll not only avoid scams, but also extend your engine's lifespan and keep your car running longer.